All right, a little bit about the Christmas bird count history in general. Doesn't start off so great, but we get to a good place eventually. Used to be called the Christmas side hunt, where they would get together and go and shoot everything and make piles, and the biggest pile wins. And it sounds so comically ridiculous that you know it just had to happen, right? This is like, could you imagine trying to shoot nuthatches? Like, it's insane. At some point, though, 1900s, it finally turns around and people are like, maybe we don't have to shoot all of the birds. It's a lovely revelation. If we had to go out and shoot the birds that we were counting, I don't think I would be a part of this. That's just me. It started off 27 participants only, which we have more than that here regularly. 25 counts, 90 species. So it started off very small. A lot of people still wanted to shoot things, I guess, but eventually they came around to it, and now it seems ridiculous to go out and kill everything. Now we have a count window, December 14th to January 5th. So it's coming up in a couple of days. Very exciting. The number of volunteers is tens of thousands. It's worldwide now. We get counts in Central America, South America. The number of birds that are counted is just, I love how many it is. I think we hit 41 million individual birds last year, which is just super cool. I think it's great to count that many. It gives us a good snapshot of the trends. You can just see how many million birds we see this year versus next year. What's going on? Why does it change? That's what Audubon and all those other groups do with this stuff. It's not just gathering numbers and ranking ourselves and competing with each other just to be funny and not do anything with it. It does actually go into useful things. Logistics, boring stuff. We get to the pretty bird pictures soon, don't worry. Compilers, me, I pick a single day. I usually coordinate it with Dave because he does the Thousand Oaks Circle, and we don't want to do it on the same day because then we got to fight over people. It's a 15-mile diameter circle. I have a picture I'll show you on the next slide. Count week, or whatever you want to count it as, 3 days prior and 3 days after. That's kind of like, I hate count week. I don't know what the point of it is, but it's there. It doesn't count for our total. It's just like the consolation you get when that bird disappears on count day and shows up the day after. And then you just put a little CW on the sheet, and I cringe every time. It's fine. And because this comes up every year, why did you pick this date? I'm going to be somewhere. I'm going to do this. Santa Barbara has their count this day. Carpinteria has a count this day. Everybody's got something happening. It's December. It's the holidays are coming, right? Everybody's got something going on. My criteria: it's always a weekend, barring unusual events. We always try to avoid the holidays because nobody's going to do a Christmas bird count on actual Christmas Day. We try to avoid not counting the same day as Thousand Oaks because it's a lot of the same people that do both. I cannot do that with Santa Barbara, Carpinteria, Malibu. There's literally 8 circles, and I think there's a 9th one now within an hour of Ventura. There's not enough days to make everybody happy, so sorry. We do the best we can. I think this year is pretty good. Nobody has really come up and complained about it, but we still have like 11 days left, so it's funny, but it's not. I get real like, look, I did this to spite you personally. The other 100 people I don't care about. This is our circle. It's a beauty. We divide it up into sectors. We track our data by sectors. It's easier to coordinate this effort. Like I said, we get over 100 people every year. My goal is to get as many people as possible involved in the Christmas bird count every year. I want everybody to count the birds in their yard if they live in a circle, everybody to come out and join a bird walk. I'm all about the numbers of people first. Yeah, so we've got the 8 different sectors here. We have a sector leader for each one. They coordinate each sector. I send volunteers to them and just try and make things go as smoothly as possible. Our own individual circle history. We started in 1980, which was a fantastic year. This is going to be our 45th count. Our average just went up. Last year it was 177, and now we're at 178, so good job. I say we average 100 participants. Since I've been doing it, I'm sure the average is probably more like 110 because we sometimes get a lot of people, which is a lot for this area. Santa Barbara tends to get like 180, 190 people, but they have like 4 coordinators. They rent out a place and have this huge dinner afterwards. It's Santa Barbara. They do it big, right? Our high count is 202 species. Unfortunately, that's before my time, but someday, maybe, possibly. This number, 311 species have been counted on our Christmas bird count over those 44 years, which means theoretically, We can hit 311 species if we have the most incredible year ever. And I had started to think about this and kind of fell into this like mental rabbit hole about it. Like, what would have to happen to get all those species? Because a lot of them just show up once or twice. Some of them only show up on cold winters. Some of them only show up when there's like warmer winters. Some show up when the ocean birds get pushed in close. And I think there's just too many different factors for it all to ever happen at once. But that's a goal, 300. We haven't hit 200 in a while, but let's go for three. Perennially, we're a top 25 count in North America. That's a lot. There's hundreds of circles in North America, and we're always up there. So we should be proud of ourselves for living in such a birdable place here like Ventura. This is the part that I love to look at. This is a graphs that you can pull. If you go onto the Ventura website, there's a link to this database. You can go by species, you can go by year, and you can generate these little graphs. Brad Sillison put this together, and it is so much fun to play with. And there's a lot of these slides, and I'm not going to apologize because I think it's kind of fun. This is the Allen's hummingbird, and this is the number of times that it's appeared every year on the Christmas bird count. And you can see, obviously, not a lot, not a lot, not a lot, and then boom, right? And this has to do with the two different subspecies, the one that migrates, and then the one from the Channel Islands, which came over, and now they winter here and everything. We get a lot of Allen's hummingbirds, but if you were birding back here in the 80s, maybe some of you probably in the 80s, there were no Allen's hummingbirds here in the winter. They were hard to come by. It's just kind of a change, right? And that's what this data is really good at, showing these cool changes. Some are good, some are scary, and some are just like really frustrating. Here's one of the frustrating ones. Here's the Eurasian collared dove. Back in the 80s, there were no such thing. There were no collared doves here. It was probably nice, I imagine, because I get a lot of complaints about these birds at my store, taking over the feeders, chasing away the mourning doves, just being big doves. So you can see we really don't get anything until the mid 90s, and then there's a few, and then there's some, and then all of a sudden population explodes, and now they're everywhere, right? Like nobody's afraid of missing Eurasian collared dove on a Christmas bird count in Southern California anywhere. But they're still spreading out. They don't really get them in the East Coast yet. The Northeast hasn't gotten them, but they will. And then everybody's going to have charts that look like this. This is why invasive species are not fun. But here's one that's not invasive. Pelicans, the white pelicans. You think of them as kind of mainstays at the river estuary and the settling ponds during the winter. They didn't used to be. Used to be pretty rare. They can give us the finger back there in the 80s, but then in the 90s, you get a few more. And then we started to really get a lot of them. And those 2 years where you get the giant spikes, I was really excited because this is one of the birds I always want to try and get the next highest count for, just because it was like trending up so much. And then you see that last year. Last year is the little tiny dot, right? There's a story about last year and these pelicans, but we did not have them. If anybody was at the reveal, the dinner where we got together and counted it, and it looked like I was going to cry, we had missed white pelican up until like the 11th hour. So we got stories to talk about when we get to the individual counts. This is a fun one that I'm very excited to because I was the one that got them on the first Christmas bird count out here when they showed up because I count the ponds and that's where they be. These are yellow-crowned night herons and they've been at Point Mugu for a couple of decades now, breeding, population's been growing and growing. They finally started expanding north and you can see literally right when it happens. And now you get them at the Christmas bird count and we're still getting more. So I'm hoping this year we can break the record, which I think is like 16 or 17. And they've gone past us here in Ventura. Now they're up at the Carpinteria Salt Marsh, and I think they get them up into Santa Barbara and Goleta as well. So that was one of those things where they just gathered at Mugu and bred for a long time. And every time we do a Mugu trip, it was like, well, there's 50, now there's 70, there's about 80 now, and then they just spread up north up the coast. Why would they do that? No. Probably something to do with the climate, maybe some warming temperature and available habitat. We'll just call it climate change, climate shifting, whatever it is. We probably can't talk about it for in a couple of months. I don't think we can really talk about it. So for now, we're going to say that's what's going on. And so one of the other trends that's been emerging through Christmas bird count nationally is the ducks. Where are all the ducks? The ducks have been wintering farther north. They don't come as far south. More of that habitat is available to them farther up north. Maybe because it's not freezing anymore, maybe climate change again, I don't know. And so I was curious to see if that holds up in our local data because I'm at the ponds, I look for the ducks, and I'm like, cinnamon teals are hard to come by sometimes. Like I loop it twice to find the one hiding in the reeds. And so this is the cinnamon teal, the blue winged teal, and the green winged teal. Green wings up top. And you can see, I mean, you don't really need to look at these too hard to see that the numbers are pretty, they're down, right? They're definitely not what they used to be in the 80s and in the 90s. Like we got one blue winged teal last year, and that was the first one in 5 years. And I remember when they used to be there all the time. You'd always get one or two at the settling ponds, and now it's just kind of like, where'd they all go? So it does look like, at least as far as the teal are concerned, they're not wintering here in the numbers that they used to be wintering in. I don't know if they are Point Magoo still, but my guess is that they're all starting to dwindle. Here's some other ducks that I just pulled because they're like, if I see these ducks at the ponds on the Christmas bird count, I get excited, which probably means that they're not there very often, right? So you've got ringneck ducks up top. You've got the pintails, which I haven't seen a pintail at the ponds for like 6 or 7 years. And then you've got the American widgeon down there. And same kind of thing, big numbers, kind of medium numbers, and then very sporadic, very minimal. I don't know what the deal with the pintail is, but so it does seem like we can lend our data into the national level and be like, yeah, it looks like the ducks are not down here in the south as much as they were. In the southeast, it's the same kind of thing. They're just moving up the coast on either side. So now when I go to the settling ponds, I have to find every duck, count every duck, because now it counts. It's even more important. Like I think we didn't get ringneck ducks at the settling ponds last year, and that was one of the ones that was there the day before. It was there 2 days after. Rage. Right, so now we're going to look at each of the count years and kind of touch on some highlights and obviously a challenge or two. 2017 was, I guess, the third year that I was in charge after taking over from Carl Krause. And that was fire year. That was the Thomas fire. This is the red area on this is where area that was literally burned or still on fire, actually, by the time that we got around to doing the count, smoldering. And so we delayed the Christmas bird count for the first time by 2 weeks. We pushed it out to give everybody as much time, all the smoke to clear out, the firefighters to finish up, so we could get to as much of that habitat as we could. And it was challenging. We still had 100 people that were willing to come out and do that, and we still got 175 species, which is pretty good. What I remember Linda Easter telling me from Cañada Larga Road, which was heavily burned, a lot of that area was burned, was that there were pockets of green space, and that's where all the birds were. And she said it was a very easy time to count the birds because they were all in those spots. Yeah, that's all right. That's a silver lining. Thanks, Linda. Next year was a little better. Our species were down. We had a few more people. First, that was the first time the yellow-crowned night herons appeared. So this was us at the settling ponds. We had the VC Star with us to document everything. And I was just like, I knew the yellow crowns were there. I was very excited about it. And I'm like, yes, yellow-crowned night herons, the first time it's been on the thing. And I'm trying to explain it to the reporter and the camera guy. And they're just like, what's that big one over there? Oh, is that a white pelican? And they're just like not getting it at all. So if anybody needs the Star to come with them for the Christmas bird count, it's not going to be me anymore unless they have a birder on staff. So that was a great year. And then if you remember that year, it was a torrential downpour in the afternoon. So we did everything in the morning real quick. I went around the ponds again and just got dumped on. And I think that's why our count number was a little bit lower that year. And even coming up to the potluck, when we did the potluck, it was like blinding conditions. Everybody was like, I can't believe we came up here. You don't have to. Or why you did. 2019 was a more normal year for most of us. Personally, not so much for me, but it was a good time. Got up to 184 species. Chestnut back chickadee, I was very excited to get. As somebody who sells bird seed, I know the appeal of chickadees, and I wish that we had them here in Ventura County. So when these guys started showing up, I was like, come on in, come down chickadees. I can start marketing with chickadees. No, they showed up and they left a couple days later. They crossed the border every once in a while, but they have not come in groups like I was very much praying they would, but that's all right. Someday they will come and join us. That's not the slide I have. There we go. 2020 was a great year. 185 species, all kinds of new stuff showed up. This broad-billed hummingbird was a delight. It's not actually that one, but there was a male broad-billed hummingbird at one of my customers' feeders. She got all these pictures on a WBU hummingbird, and it was fantastic. And I looked at our database just to see how likely it was, like how often this bird shows up. And it's like once every 30 years. So that bird is not in our top 10. I would love it if somebody had one at their feeders, but I'm not going to. It's not 2050, I think, is when we're going to see another one. So, Baltimore Oriole, Neotropic Cormorant was new. Lucy's Warbler was new. This was a year we got wild turkey, which everybody is always excited to hear about. But you can kind of see as we go through these and I show you the list of the birds, and it's like, wow, what this and that and this. It's really such a fine edge between having 175 species and like 190 species. And it's just what's wintering in the area, what's the weather like, did the mountain bluebirds get pushed down, are the Lewis's woodpeckers here? There's so much that goes into it that I really spend a lot of time thinking about. Next year, 180 species, we started setting our high white pelican count, our high yellow crowned night heron count. Painted redstart was a lovely, colorful bird that hung out at Arroyo Verde for a couple of years. Somebody got a short-eared owl, which is always exciting. And then the Moonias started rolling in. This is another thing. Like, I am in touch with the local birding community a lot. People come in and like, I got this bird. What's this bird in my yard? And it's a Moonia. Like, okay, that's weird. Just the Camarillo and Santa Barbara. That's where they've been like the mainstays. A couple people in Ventura came in. I went to Camino Real and saw a few, and then there were some at the settling ponds, and I was like, uh-oh, I think the scaly-breasted Moonias are invading. And sure enough, we had like 50 of them last year. So everybody brush up on your Moonia identifications because they're coming. 2022 was a great year, 192 species. It was just, I was so excited. Everything that we knew was in town showed up. Some other things showed up. A catbird was in somebody's backyard. Rose-breasted grosbeak was in somebody's yard. A couple of red knots, which I think were new that year. Parola was wintering at the settling ponds. Virginia's warbler popped up. And it was just kind of like all of those things you think about, like all of the things that need to happen to get you up to 200 species, and a bunch of them happened. And I was like, here we go, we're going to do something. But then we missed like Western sandpiper or something. It's just always, there's always something. It's like, oh, just missed it. But we ranked number 10. We tied in number 10 for that. So 192 species gets you to 10th place if you're interested in competition or anything like that. Last year, this is a great picture. This is a still shot from that video of the people on Seward Ave when the wave came in and they all ran away. This was another reason why we delayed the count. If you remember, we had some strange wave activity and some flooding. And a couple days before the count, basically all the beaches were closed. People were getting washed out to the ocean. It was insane. It was crazy times. And so I was like, we're not going to count that. We can't do, 3 of the sectors are heavily ocean based. We can't go risk putting people out there. So we ended up doing the count, I think, on like a Thursday or a Friday. Everybody's like, why did you pick that day? We could have done it. That one actually did happen. That was frustrating. There was another count going on like the 1st of January. So we always butt up against something. But we still managed 179 species. And this was a good count for random stuff that kind of saved our number. I get really wound up in the numbers, and I really want us to get like a high species count because we have a lot of birds here in Ventura County, and this kind of represents that. So we went to dinner and we did the count, and we were like reading stuff off, and we were missing like, there were almost no ducks. There was like 1 goose. We were missing a couple of the warblers that we knew were around. Common merganser we missed, and it was just like, I'm just like sitting there like I'm in a fight. I'm just like taking shots. Oh, dude, oh, can't believe we missed that. And the white pelicans was it. That sealed it for me. Nobody saw white pelicans. There were none at the ponds, none at the river estuary, none at Lake Casitas. And that presumably was because of what happened with the surf coming in and washing everything out. The pelicans probably just went down to Magoo or up to Santa Barbara and just said, the heck with you guys, we're done. So this count is where I earned my paycheck for being the Christmas bird count compiler. I refused to give up. We were sitting at like 170 for a while, and I was just like, that can't be it. So one of the things I do pretty much every year is I go through eBird on that day and try to find birds that were missing. And I search for the bird. There's just nothing. And somebody, and I know who it is, but I don't want to say it, went birding on the Christmas bird count last year and didn't tell me. And it's okay. I don't know the guy, but come on. And this guy went around to like 5 different places and picked up so many birds we were missing that it was just like a gold mine. I had to text Dave. I was like, "Is this guy for real? Like, do you know who this is, or is it just somebody messing with me?" He saw the only white pelicans at the Ventura Botanic Garden. 3 of them flew over, and I was like, I was so happy I almost cried. I'm almost crying now. And I was just like adding all this stuff in. I was like, oh, finally we're gonna get a decent number. And we got up to 179, so we were above average still. But these things, I mean, people will come to these counts and they'll be like, oh, I just saw one peregrine falcon, but it's not a big deal. And it's like, no, no, every bird. Don't assume that we have it. Like we do the thing on the app for a reason, right? And we had one peregrine falcon. We have so many birds that are only single reports on Christmas bird counts. I'd say it's between 20 to 40 species, counting the rare ones and stuff. So even if you see one sharp-shinned hawk and it's like, oh, whatever, he's there all the time, I'm sure they get a million of them. Don't assume that. Please don't assume that. All right. How can you participate? Obviously, you can join a group. There's plenty of groups. There are the sectors. They all have people going out. Only sector you can't join is the ocean sector, unless you have a boat, and then talk to Dave. If you want a form to do your backyard birds, you can email me at venturabirdcount@gmail.com. I also have a stack of them over there on the table. You can grab one on your way out. You do have to live in that circle that we looked at in order for your birds to count. So that's the only restriction. It's a date restriction and a location restriction. So that's what you got to do. If you're in the circle, count the birds in your yard, count the birds in your neighborhood, local parks, they all count. If you can't be here for count day, if you're not in the circle, you can scout birds. Go find that long-tailed duck that's hanging out in Marina Harbor. Make sure he's still there. Try and get it for count week. That's something, I guess. But it's going to irritate me. But at least it's on count week, I guess. We'll go with that. Here are our sectors and our sector leaders. You probably know most of these people. The names are pretty good birders. We got a good group this year. Tina is taking over for Linda Easter and Kenyatta Larga, and Linda has been a sector leader out there for longer than since before I moved here. So I don't really know how long. It's been a long time, but she did a great job heading up that sector, and she's helping Tina get started now. And we also have Ventura Land Trust, Laura, who's in the back there. We have a good partnership with them. They have a lot of properties that normally we wouldn't get access to. And she's going to coordinate people counting there because it crosses over into a bunch of different sectors. And I do all the backyard bird counting people. So if you're counting in the backyard, you get to deal with me. And I'm the one who tells you that that bird isn't rare. I'm sorry. But it's the integrity of the count, right? We have to keep up. All right. So if you can count your backyard birds, and this counts for yards, it counts for parks, whatever you want to do, counting periodically throughout the day is fine. Spend 5 minutes, spend 10 minutes, see what's out on your feeders, jot it down, write on the sheet, and then do that a couple times a day. And people always ask me, how do you know you're not counting the same bird twice? To be honest with you, with 40 million birds, I can't be honest. I don't know that that's going to happen. It might be the same bird 40 million times. What you want to do if you're doing your yard and you're counting multiple times during the day is just report the max number of any species that you see during the day. So if you have 5 white crowns in the morning, 10 in the afternoon, and 15 at dusk, just put 15. Don't try and identify each individual white crown. Unless you're able to do that, then please do. If you see something strange, please take a picture if you can, send it to me. Otherwise, make a very detailed description. And I will say pictures are worth way more because it's hard to describe a very fast moving tiny yellow bird and it's not likely to be accepted. So pictures are good. It's really that easy. It's not, it's science, but it's not rocket science, it's bird science. So if you're out counting in a large group, this applies in your yard. I would love to see your yard, but how to count big groups of birds, right? You look at the beach and you see just endless rows of shorebirds, 100 million pelicans fly overhead. Some tricks to do this is you kind of visually divide the area either in half or quarters, whatever you want. Just count the birds in one section, multiply it by the number of sections you've created, and that gives you a rough estimate. It's kind of a fast way to scan through a bunch of birds and come up with a guesstimate for how many birds are there. You do still have to look at them all to make sure that they're all the same species, though. You might miss that one rare red knot in those shorebirds or something like that. So this counts. This is fine. I am not going to come at anybody and be like, did you really get 214 ruddy ducks? Like I'm not that crazy. But with the rare birds, I'll say this actually happened a couple of years ago. We had a golden eagle. It was reported in 3 different sectors. And you could see the flight path the bird took during the day because it was like over Cañada Larga, it was over the city sector, went up over Casitas, and I'm like, what are the odds that we really had like 3 golden eagles in the same vicinity? It's probably not. So when I get all the data, I go through and look for weird things like that. Like there are some things that stand out as just being a little too strange, a little too bizarre, especially with the rare birds that show up. Multiple people go and see the parula at the settling ponds. I know there's only one. It's not going to be 5 for everybody who reports it. So there is some like common sense checking that goes on before I turn this into Audubon. All right, we're going to talk about the yard birds that we want. These are mostly yard birds. If you're lucky enough to have these birds in your yard, that's awesome. Again, pictures are great. Some of them are pretty distinctive. You have to earn my trust a little bit, but that's fine. A lot of these birds come to feeders. We have had some amazing birds at feeders, bird baths, trees in your backyard. Some of these are a little tricky to identify, but we'll talk about that later. There's not really 10, I lie. Every bird that has a picture in here is a bird I want for the Christmas bird count. Even the white crowns, we'll include those too. So if you've been paying attention, there's like 26. Top 26 doesn't have the same ring to it. So we're going to go with top 10, and there's really more than that. That's too bad. So not your normal warblers. The normal warblers we get, yellow rump warblers, there's a million of them, Townsend's, orange crown, common yellowthroat. Wilson's is a regular winter bird, but I don't want to throw any of those away. So if you get Wilson's warbler, we'll say that's cool. Black and white, there's one at the settling ponds, but they tend to be in woody yards, right? So you could find them climbing up in under trees there. Nashville warblers have been known to winter here. Almost all the warblers have wintered here in Ventura at this point. So if you see a warbler and it's not one of those like 3 or 4, let me know. Take a picture. Let's get it. Lucy's warbler, Virginia, the Parulas, worm-eating warbler we've had records of. So any warbler is possible, which makes my heart happy. Now we'll do 10. 10 is the Costa's hummingbird. This is a tough one. Hummingbirds are tough. I know they're hard to identify, but what you're looking for, this is the only one I'm going to do ID stuff for, I guess. This long piece that comes off of the gorget there is much, much longer than what you get on an Anna's hummingbird, like noticeably larger. They also tend to be a little bit more chunky looking. They're kind of round. The beak's a little bit shorter, stubbier looking. There's not a lot of Costas, but we do typically get 1 or 2 in the circle every year. So check your hummingbird feeders for any interesting hummingbird activity. 9 is our lovely pine siskin. I love these little guys. I don't think we're in for a big eruption year. As far as I know, I haven't heard of many sightings or many red-breasted nuthatches, but even on non-eruption years, we can get 1 or 2, and sometimes that's it. So pine siskin for sure. They will come to your Niger feeders, your sunflower chips. There's been a couple of reports, I think, at Fillmore and Thousand Oaks. So it's possible we could get one. My guess would be probably up in Ojai. A lot of these birds apply to Ojai. Does anybody here live in Ojai? That's close enough. Are you not working on Saturday, though? All right. Don't volunteer. I'll put you to work. 8 is easy. It's just any tanager. If you see a tanager and you know it's a tanager, I'm excited. You're excited. We're all happy. We'll high five at the dinner thing. Summer tanager we have had for 5 years in a row. Summer tanager used to be a hard bird to get here, and sometimes we have 3 or 4, which is pretty cool. Western tanager we usually get every year, but always on the lookout for more. Fruit trees are especially popular for tanagers and some of the other birds we'll talk about. I put this every year. I miss Alan. If anybody has contact with him and have him come back and get the wild turkey for our count, that would be great. We do have wild turkeys here. Usually they're found up in Ojai or Cañada Larga, and they avoid our counts like the plague. And Alan used to be able to find them like nobody's business. So I've only ever seen a wild turkey crossing the street in Ojai once. So I can't help you too much on that. But keep an eye out for turkeys, which I think you would anyway. But don't think that turkey doesn't count for the Christmas bird count. It very much does. It's close then. So if you know where they roost and you watch them from within the circle, I'm just saying, they might come into the circle. Yeah, right. I trust the people up in Ojai. I'm just saying. Um, Here's one that everybody should be keeping an eye out for. If you have bird feeders, if you have a flock of white-crowned sparrows, these guys could show up anywhere. They love to hang out in mixed flocks of sparrows. These are white-throated sparrows. Um, they look a lot like white crowns superficially. What you want to look for is the yellow in the lures between the eye and the beak. The bright white throat is a good field mark, but sometimes the white crowns look like they have white throats, so I always caution to be a little bit careful with that. The last thing is the beak color. If you have a big flock of white crowns and you see one with a gray beak, that's one you want to pay attention to. And the Lawrence's goldfinch. This bird has been one of those like weird things where it's on the count, it's not on the count. People hear it, people sometimes think it's there, and I really just want a good sighting of it. I have a hard time approving Merlin recordings of Lawrence's goldfinch because that's one of the ones where I've played with Merlin at the ponds and a flock of bush tits went by and it rung up as Lawrence's goldfinch more than once now. So I don't want to accept audio recordings of Lawrence's goldfinches. So please see them. This is another one that's probably going to be more likely to be Ojai, but they are very cute. And they would be in with your feeder birds, your finches, your goldfinches. 4 is a white-winged dove. It's been a little while since I've seen any reports of white-winged doves, but they do occasionally show up at yards. Actually, the last one I saw, I was delivering seed to somebody in Carpinteria and one just walked across their pathway. And I'm like, there's 0 chance they know this is here. So I wrote a note on the receipt and said, you have a white-winged dove in your yard, and I put it up. So hopefully it's still there and they can get it to the Carpinteria circle. I don't know. If I see any white-winged doves at your yards, I'll let you know. But please check for yourselves. The white wing, obviously, is what you're looking for. Number 3, along with any tanager, we're going to go with any oriole. They should all be gone by now, but our data shows that the Bullock's oriole is here almost every year. There's at least one Bullock's oriole. Hooded, we haven't had in like 15 years for some reason, which is crazy to me because I feel like we get way more hooded orioles here in the spring. But I guess the Bullocks are just, they don't feel like leaving so much, so they stick around. We actually have more recent records of Baltimore and Orchard than we do of hooded oriole, which is kind of cool. I like that everybody's taking pictures of the birds too. Obviously the female birds count too, but since I wanted to wow you with pretty bird pictures, I just used them. So if you have anything that looks like an oriole or a tanager, even if you can't tell what the difference is, if it looks like this bird is the right size and shape for one of those two, just snap a picture of it, send it to me, and I will happily send it to Dave so he can tell us what it is. This used to be number 1. And as soon as I put it at number 1, we got it that year. So I don't know if we're going to get it again this year. These guys show up randomly at people's yards. Rose-breasted grosbeak, very striking. The males are pretty hard to miss. The females are a little trickier, but I will take a black-throated or black-headed grosbeak as well. So if it's a female grosbeak, I'll take that. We don't get black-headed grosbeak very often. I think we've had rose-breasted more than black-headed recently. So now we're up to number 1. And you're going to laugh. You might laugh. I laughed. Jesse Grantham is no longer living around here. And he was the guy, much like Alan and his turkeys, it was Jesse and the Western Screech Owls. And we have not gotten one since. So I know, Dave. I'm just going to give you the top 10 list and you can get them all. But I got to get some people up in Ojai to do this. I have a customer who lives next to where Jesse lived and checks the owl box and just can never seem to get it. So I know they're up there. If you know where they are, can we just tell the folks running the Ojai group and have them go get it? Because we haven't gotten a Western Screech Owl for like 4 or 5 years now. Yeah. I guess we could recruit volunteers to go owling. If anybody wants to go owling. And then I threw in a bonus bird because this is like an annual joke at this point. This is the zone-tailed hawk. We get them every year in Ojai. and they flirt with the circle like you wouldn't believe. They fly into Casitas for the count week, and they fly into the Upper Valley after, and they hang out up there, and everybody's like, and I check eBird, and I see it's just like a mile outside of the circle every time. So if you're in Ojai, check every turkey vulture, because one year this bird is going to mess up and we're going to get it on the count again. But it has been a long time. I've always wanted to get it on the count, and I think we have once in the 10 years that I've been doing it. It's a count week bird almost every year. Or it's like if we just shift the circle a little bit, we'd be fine, but we're not able to do that. Oh, inspirational. Magic. One of the things I love about the Christmas bird count, actually that I love about birding in general, is you really don't know what you're going to see out there. Like you can guess and you can make a good estimation, and you can say it's the right time of year, I'm in the right location, the right habitat, I'm probably going to see this rare bird. I can't do that. I'm just blindly going out most of the time. So Christmas bird count for me is just like any kind of weird thing can happen, right? You can stumble across a golden crowned kinglet. My lifer golden crowned kinglet was at the settling ponds on a Christmas bird count, just walking along that paved trail, and it popped out like 3 feet in front of me, and I was like, oh my God, disappeared back in. Nobody else ever saw it. It never came around again. And that was it. It just popped up for the Christmas bird count. So same thing with the black-throated gray. I was exhausted lying on a bench after hiking around all day. And it flew into the tree above me, looked down at me, and then left. Yeah, it's a black-throated gray warbler. Cool. So you never know. Just keep your eyes open. Look, find me something, please. We're on a streak. What is it? Dave's yard has become a Christmas bird count hotspot. You're talking about the hummingbird. Okay, good. Okay, so what can you do to get ready? We have 11 days. You can email me for a checklist. If you want to participate in a group, you can email me and I'll divvy you out one of the sector leaders. The lists are over on the table again. Listen for unusual birds in your neighborhood. Why not? Maybe you've got owls in your neighborhood. That would be fun. Maybe there's a warbler there that you're not familiar with. I realize I'm asking a lot for people to practice birding by ear in 11 days, but I'll let you use Merlin. You can use Merlin. If Merlin says you have something cool, let me know. You can take pictures of any of the top 10 or 26 birds that you've seen recently. Anything that we can get a general location for, I can send people in the afternoon to go and check out and see if it's still there. Check your local parks for unusual species. There are a ton of little green spaces in Ventura, in Ojai, that we just don't have enough people to go to. We hit the big ones. We hit Camino, we hit Arroyo Verde, we hit the Botanic Gardens, Grant Park. But there are all these little places that would be helpful if people would scout ahead of time. I know they're small and there's usually nothing there, but you never know. Somebody had a pink-sided junco there once. Study, prepare, look at your common and uncommon species, know how to tell the difference between a Lawrence's goldfinch and a lesser goldfinch, white-throated versus white crown. It's not too late to set up a bird feeder or put a bird bath out. It is probably too late to put native plants in. I don't think that's going to really draw them in right away, but that's more of a long-term thing. You're in it for the long haul and you want more birds. Actually, we put a lot of native plants in Dave's yard, and all of a sudden he's racking up these like once-in-a-lifetime Christmas bird count birds. So I'm just saying, native plants and Wild Birds Unlimited bird seed is pretty good. Some resources. Audubon.com.org, whatever, CBC. You can find other circles if you get a taste of this one and decide you want to go do all the rest of the circles. There's one the following day in Thousand Oaks, and then all the rest. I think Santa Barbara's is in January this year. Ventura, if you want to see that database, there's a link to it on the Ventura page. I have a beginner bird ID class that I teach that I'm actually going to be doing on Sunday, which I'll put up in a minute. And then All About Birds, you can always look up where the birds are, what they sound like, and what they look like on allaboutbirds.org. Upcoming events. This is the Lewis's woodpecker. He was on there last year, but we're not getting them this year, so I'm not getting excited about it. Quick plug for my store. I'm doing a holiday bird bazaar on Saturday the 14th. We're going to have a make your own pine cone feeder, which you can put outside and get rare birds to your yard. We're going to have local vendors with some crafts that they made. And the Raptor Center is going to come in and talk to us about owls. And I'm going to ask them where the Western screech owls are, and I'm going to try and get them to go find them for me. They don't know that yet, but I'm going to try. If you want to brush up on your bird ID things, I do a lot of online bird classes. I'm doing one on Sunday on Zoom. If you're on Facebook, you can find me on Facebook. It's an hour long. I'm just going to focus on the Southern California birds, a lot of the birds that we talked about here. then we've got the count on Saturday, and we've got Thousand Oaks count on Sunday, which you can talk to Dave if you want to participate in that one. And then we're almost done. That's where my store is, formerly near Bed Bath & Beyond. If you've noticed, if you've been there, it's going to be something new. They're finally doing something. And I guess I could spoil the surprise. It's going to be a Home Goods for anybody. I got a gasp and a new. Yeah, I don't go. I don't know. But I'm more excited to have something there because it's been empty for a while. And then, yeah, these are the Facebook pages. You can find me there. My events are posted there, as well as the beginning bird ID class that we're going to do.